starting Ayin Aleph, Amud Aleph. The Mishnah tells us that an Orel is not permitted to eat Truma. Orel, uncircumcised person, is not, even though he's not permitted to circumcise himself. Let's say two of his brothers died as a result of being circumcised, yet he's not permitted. So Rabbi Kiva says, let's see, over here, Omamar, no, about a fifth down on top, Ayin Aleph from an Aleph. Omamar. Omamar, Rabbi Kiva Einu Tzorech, Hareyu Omer, Ish L'Rabbos Orel. You see it? It says Ish, next to Ish, it comes to include that not only if a person's a leper and so on, and Tomei can't eat, the next Ish comes to include the Orel. Somewhere as Fa'emel the Rabbos Onein, maybe it means Onein, a person before the burial, he's not permitted to eat Ma'aseh Sheni. So maybe also that it's coming to tell me that he's not permitted to eat Truma. Rabbi Yosef B'Chanina Makro. So Rabbi Yosef B'Chanina says, but I have a post that says Chol Zor. It says Chol Zor lo yochel bo. What is Zor? A stranger. Zorus amarti loch v'laninus. Only if he's estranged, meaning not Kohen, but if he's no-name. Somewhere says Eim of la'arelus. I mean, just as you're excluding the onein, we should also exclude the orel. Hoksiv ishish, but I have ish. Ish comes, he says, Umar Royis, why do you include Orel and not Onein? Right? He says, because I have Ish. But why do you favor to interpret Ish to include Orel, that he's not qualified? Why not Onein? Mistavra Arelus. It's more logical to say it's Orel. Why? Havale Lirbuye Shkein, Masim, Krusim, Bedav. What does that mean? Ho'evet. Mechuse Maseh. Firstly, it's Mechuse Maseh. Umase Begufo. Vonish Kores, Vyeshno Lifnei Adibor. Right? All these things. You have to do an action. It's an act to his body. It carries liability of Kores. And also it pre-exists at Sinai. Umilus Chor Vavodav Ma'keves. We find by Korban Pesach that if you have slaves or your children are uncircumcised, it interferes. So therefore, if you have a question of disqualifying a person from eating Truma, it's more logical it should be Orel rather than Onein. So we should include Aninus. Why? Aninus is continuous. Once you're circumcised, you're not an Orel. It applies. V'noag is ba'noshim and noshim. Onein has to do whether you're a man or a woman. Once you're an Onein, you a person until the burial takes place, you can't. Hanach defishin. So Abaye answers because we find there are many more issues regarding Orel, meaning restrictions. Therefore, it makes more sense we're including something which has greater liabilities rather than something that has less liabilities. Why? Because we're talking here, it's this an easy one. It says ish. What differentiates between a man and a woman? Aninus, they're the same. So evidently, it's what? It's the Orla. Haviyom is the Orelus. So Mari asks now, Rabbi Kiva, according to Rabbi Lezer had a Gzera Shova. It says Tosha V'Sochir by Korban Pesach. It says Tosha V'Sochir by Truma. So what does he do with that Gzera Shova? Right? Rabbi Lezer learns from the Gzera Shova that we equate one to the other. Just as the Orel cannot eat Korban Pesach, the Orel cannot eat Truma. But according to Rabbi Kiva, he learns it from Ish. That Ish comes to exclude the Orel, to disqualify the Orel. What does he do with the Gzera Shova, Tosha V'Sochir? Omar Rabbi Shmayo, Lashi Arvi Mol, V'Givoni Mol. Now, let's say a person is an Arab that's circumcised, or Givoni that's circumcised, that they're not qualified to eat the Korban Pesach. So just as they're not qualified to eat Korban Pesach, same thing, they're not qualified, that's what it comes to. So Mer says, just because they're circumcised, that's considered circumcised. V'Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah in the Dorim, Konem Shani Nena Larelim. Person makes a netter, he will not benefit from a person who's an Orel. From an Orel. Muta Ba'arli Yisrael, he's permitted to benefit from an uncircumcised Jew. But he's not permitted to benefit from a goy that's circumcised. So you see why? That a circumcised goy is like he's uncircumcised. Konem that I will not benefit from circumcised. Muta B'mulei Yovt Kechovim. He's permitted to benefit from circumcised goyim, but also by Arli Yisrael, because Arli Yisrael, that's considered mulim, they're classified. So what is he clear? That a goy that's circumcised means nothing. There's a question, we hold la halacha, a ger is only you have to have milah and tefillah. But there's an opinion that holds milah without tefillah is sufficient to be a Jew. And also, does he need hatov's dambris? Yeah, that's Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva holds that what? That a person who's circumcised didn't have tefillah is nothing. You need both. And also, a child that's born uncircumcised, you have to let blood. That's what I need the Gzera Shava for. Reb Lezer Litame, but Reb Lezer argues. Dama ger shemov lo tovel ger malyu. Reb Lezer's position is a ger that circumcised, even though he didn't have tefillah, he's 100%, he's a Jew. Uksava koten shenolad mol ain't tzorch latim men bris. You don't have to let blood. Therefore, what does he have the Gzera Shava for? To learn Oriel. Reb Lezer, hi, ish ishmael. So now what does it do with ish ish? Reb Kiva says, I learned from ish ish that an Oriel is not permitted to eat truma. So what does he do with ish ish? The extra word is, right? Dibra Torah koloshim ne'adam. The Torah very often speaks the way people speak. That we reiterate something. Ish ish. Boy Rav, now a new question. Okay? Boy Rav Choma bar Ukva. Cotton Oriel. Now, the halacha is, we say sicha kishtil, it's in Yom Kippur. You're not permitted to anoint yourself because anointing is like drinking. So the halacha is we're saying an Oriel is not permitted to eat truma. So let's say you have a child that's less than 8 days old. So he's uncircumcised. You're not supposed to circumcise him. And you want to anoint the child who's a Kohen, the child of a Kohen, with oil that's truma oil. So anointing him is like feeding him. It's like feeding him the oil. Are you permitted or not? If he's an Oriel, you're not permitted. It's like feeding an Oriel truma. But if you say before the 8th day, since it's not meant to be removed, it's not called a foreskin yet. I mean, it's called a foreskin, but it's just a piece of skin. So that's the Gemara Shaila. Boy Rami Bar Rukva. Caught nor mal socha b'shem shel truma, arei l'shlo b'zman makva. Being an Oriel before the 8th day, that's ma'akiv, meaning it prevents you from doing it. Olo, makva, maybe not. Omer Reb Zero. So Reb Zero brings a proof. Toshma. Now it says the halachas by Korban Pesach. Here. By Korban Pesach, if a person's children are not circumcised or slaves are not circumcised, he's not permitted to eat the Korban Pesach. Right? Okay, now. So we learn in the Bra'en Liel Milah Zechorov B'Shas Asiyah. Now you have two things. You have when you slaughter the Korban, let's say your children or your slaves were not circumcised, you're disqualified. The Shechit is not valid. Right? Okay, that's easy. No. Whoever participates in the Korban Pesach, if any of the participants who have a share, they have children who are not circumcised or slaves not circumcised, it's not a valid, for them it's not a valid Korban Pesach. It's not, okay? No, there's kosher. This person's part is not, he cannot participate, okay? When it speaks about his children, it says, if your children are uncircumcised, you cannot slaughter the Korban Pesach. Okay? When it speaks about having slaves that are not circumcised, it says you cannot eat the Korban Pesach. We'll see, but each one applies to the other. So where it says, how do we know what we find by one applies to the other and the other applies to the other? Meaning, children are only mentioned at time of the slaughtering. How do we know even slaves at time of the slaughtering? Slaves are only time of the eating. Children are not mentioned. How do we know even children? So Mar says, Tamlo ozos. I have Gzera Shava. Oz to oz. Gzera Shava. Rega. Right? So Mar says, Bishlom avoda mishkach so disnu b'shas achilo, lesnu b'shas asiya gold is avninu beni beni. Let's say, how do you have slaves that you have, the slaves uncircumcised at the time of the eating and not time of the slaughtering? Very easy. You slaughtered Korban Pesach, you didn't own the slave. You bought the slave 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Erev Pesach. So now at nighttime, you have an uncircumcised slave. We say you cannot participate. Even though at the time when the slaughtering, you had a share, but now you can't. What's the case where you have a child who was not there at the time of the slaughtering, but was there at the time of eating? Evidently, he wasn't born yet, right? That after the animal was slaughtered, the Korban Pesach was slaughtered, the child was born. But if you can tell me that our Reilus, before the 8th day, we don't consider it an Orel, so why? What's the problem? even though the child's not circumcised, he's not meant to be circumcised. So Shmamino, so we're able to bring proof from there. Areil shlo bizmano, havyarelus, that the orla before the 8th day is classified as an orel. So that's the case. Where do you have a case of a child who was not a problem at the time of the shechita, but a problem at the time of the eating, when you broil and eat it? Child's born after slaughtering, and he's alive now at night. But if you tell me an orelus before the 8th day is not an orel, what's the problem? So evidently, you see from here it is. Omar Rava. So Rava asks a phenomenal question. Phenomenal question, Howard. Give you a bracha. You should ask such questions. Okay? Omar Rava b'tizbrach. He says, could you say what you're saying? Is it even should be considered? It says, Himo lochem kol zocher. By Korban Pesach, it says, you must circumcise all your males. What does that mean? Omar Achmona. V'oz yakri voso. It says, circumcise your males, then you will bring the korban. Is the Torah speaking about this male? If the child was just born, does the child want you to Torah want you to circumcise him now? Torah wants him to be circumcised after the 8th day. So that can't be the case. So it's not a proof. Because the halacha is, it would not be ma'akiv, it would not interfere with the Korban Pesach. Right? You're not supposed to mal him. The Torah says, circumcise your child and then bring the korban. That's besides, that's not it. That's not the point. The point is we're saying, since you didn't circumcise, that interferes with eating. But the Gemara doesn't say that. The Torah says, when you're obligated to circumcise him, do it, and then you'll eat it. So it seems if you're not obligated to circumcise, then you don't. It doesn't interfere. So the child before the 8th day, he's not meant to be circumcised. You know what happened? The child took on a fever. The native lekol shiva. Somewhere asks, right? Somewhere says, and yet a child who has a fever, you have to wait 7 days before you circumcise him. Yeah, I was waiting for you to come because there's a medical issue. A child who's running a fever, even after he recovers, the fever breaks, you have to wait 7 days before you circumcise him. Because the child is not considered fully recovered unless you had a 7-day period where he had no fever. Okay? But the Gemara says more than that. Right? So the Gemara says, the fever broke, was removed, no sloko shiva. He needs 7 days. He needs a week. The avin leko shiva, the Gemara says, in nale bitzafro. So circumcise him in the morning. The morning of the what? The morning of what? Of Erev Pesach. Gemara says, Bina and Meisleis, it's not going to help you. Because you need 7 24-hour periods. It's not normally, a child is born, let's say, before Shkia. Right? That's day 1. Right? Let's say he's born Wednesday afternoon, 5 minutes before sundown. When's the bris? Next Wednesday. Is he alive full 8 days? He's not alive 8 days. But a partial day is the day. But when it comes to recovery, he needs 7 24-hour periods where he did not have fever. So it's unrelated to sundown, sun up. From the moment the fever broke, you count from that moment 7 24-hour periods. Okay? Only then is he qualified to receive the milah. Samara says, "V'toni ludo yom havroso ki yom hivoldo." It says the day that he recovers is similar to the day that he's born. And what does that mean? The Gemara says, "My love, ma yom hivoldo lobino meisleis." Just as from the day he's born in terms of milah, you don't have 7 24-hour periods, then the 8th day, right? I mean, whenever he's born, that's considered day 1. He could be born a minute before sundown. That's day 1. And it seems to be, af yom havroso, lo bina meisleis, he says, lo. Oduf yom havroso yom hivoldo. You need more for the day that he recovers, more than the day that he's born. Dilu yom hivoldo, lo bina meisleis. From the time he's born, in terms of milo, you don't need 7 24-hour periods before you come to the 8th day. You don't need that, right? Vilu yom havroso, but in terms of recovery, being on meisleis, you need 7 24-hour periods. So what exactly is the case? Where what? So we have a case now, right? We have a case. At the time of the slaughtering, the 24-hour period wasn't there. When was the 7 24-hour periods? When was it up? In the afternoon. So the shechita was done at a time that you couldn't circumcise him. But when it comes to Achiva, now he was already circumcisable. You could circumcise him. If a child has an eye infection, a fever, you have to wait 7 24-hour periods. But for an eye infection, you have to wait till the infection heals. So let's say you had the eye infection until the 14th afternoon. So when you brought the korban, the eye infection wasn't fully healed. So at that time, you couldn't circumcise him. Now comes the afternoon, before the eating, he could be circumcised. He didn't circumcise him. So you have a situation at the time of the shechita, you weren't supposed to circumcise him. When it comes to the achila, he was supposed to be circumcised. That interferes with the korban pesach. He's saying a chiddush. Let's say the parents, the father appointed a shliach to slaughter korban pesach on his behalf, and he was incarcerated. And because he was incarcerated, he and his wife couldn't attend to the meal of his children. So therefore, he's not faulted. He's an ones. He couldn't circumcise his child. In that case, and then he was released from prison Erev Pesach in the afternoon. So during the Asiyah, there wasn't a problem. It's a valid shechita because he wasn't capable of doing the milah. In the afternoon, okay. I'll tell you what, I have difficulty with that. The case where he's incarcerated, because what's the and the Orel was saying that if a person has a child where the first 2 children died because of what? Right? And then the 3rd child not. That child interferes, doesn't allow the father to eat the korban pesach. But the question is, but he's not permitted to circumcise him. He's not allowed to circumcise him. So why being in prison is it any better than that case? You have a child who should have been circumcised, and you didn't because what? Because he was in prison.
What takes precedence, the korban or the circumcision?
No, we're saying, no.
But I'm saying in terms of mitzvahs.
The Torah says at time of the shechita, the child has to be circumcised. And at the time of the eating, he has to be circumcised. Mar asks, but if he's circumcised at the time of the shechita, he's definitely circumcised at the time of the eating. And if he's not circumcised, the Torah says no. He was what? He was, the parents, he was supposed to have the bris Erev Pesach in the morning, before the shechita, but his parents were in prison. So they couldn't do the shechita. They were onus. It was, they were held back. So therefore, even though the child's uncircumcised, the shechita is valid. Now he was released in the afternoon. So now when you eat the korban pesach at night, the child should have been circumcised. It wasn't circumcised.
But my question is, faced with 2 mitzvot, which one is taking precedence?
But here there's no contradiction. There's no contradiction.
But if I have to do one or the other, I'm in jail. I have to do one or the other.
The man wasn't planning to be in prison. He appointed an agent to slaughter korban pesach for him, and he was planning to do the meal himself. Then he was arrested the 13th of Nisan, right? B'digas Chametz, they arrested him. They couldn't come up with bail till the 14th in the afternoon. Howard, sounds familiar. Couldn't come up with bail. And then they released him. He came up with bail. They released him. So the morning is not a problem because he was in prison. The afternoon is a problem because now, okay. So we say, it does because we have another pasuk. Rav Kana, Breder, Rav Nechemyo, Magon Tumtum Shenikra. You know what happened? We had a person, his genitals were covered, and they removed the covering. Nipsa Zocher turned out to be a male. So in the morning they couldn't circumcise him. Why? Because he was covered. They didn't know he was a male. Then they found out he was a male, the child. So Baini. So in the morning the shechit is valid. In the afternoon, because you could circumcise him. So it's a problem during the achila. Rav Shravion go chotzi rosha chutz lepros. Listen to this. Which means the head came out 7 days earlier, but the body didn't come out of the mother's body. Okay, what happened? The head came out, so the child's called born. So now they didn't see the lower extremity of the body, so they didn't know if it's a male or female. Only the 14th in the afternoon, on the 8th day, did the child fully emerge from the mother. So Mar asks a question. Practically, there's no such thing. The child's not going to live. This you did in residency, Norman. A child lives based on the umbilical cord attached to its mother. It says the moment the child effaces, the nourishment through the umbilical cord ceases. So we say, niftach sosum. Now his digestive system starts working, and what was open is sealed. So if that's the case, if the child effaces, Yeah, shel mole kain and yochel lichios. Otherwise, the child, after you shot, the child would die immediately. The child, right? Because the child's no longer on life support. Till then, the child's in life support of its mother. The moment the child effaces, that life support is severed. It ceases to be. I don't understand what this means. Maybe you look over there in the footnote. That the child had a fever, and the fever sustained the child. You hear this? Somehow, because the child had a fever, the child didn't have to be fed. And the child was able to survive 7 days till the 8th day. Can you explain it? Okay? Whatever it is. Samar says, Ishta demand. Samar says, who had the fever? Was it the child's fever or was the mother's fever? Ilem ishta didei yihochi kol shiva boy. Yeah, if the child had the fever, so again we have a problem. So when the child's born, if he had a fever, so that you need an additional 7 days. Even during the achila should not be a problem, right? Because you're not permitted to circumcise him. Elo ishta dido, right? El dezonsi ishta diime. The mother had fever. And because the child was in the body of the mother, like incubating there, that heat of her body sustained him without eating for 7 days. And the child was fully born in the afternoon. It says that we say that the system shuts down, and the child that's only if the child doesn't cry. If you don't hear the child crying and he's born, then the child's going to die. But if the child cries, the child could live. Child could live. Why? I mean, you're going to feed the child. Maybe you'll feed the child. The child's head protruded a little bit. So you feed the child. Okay, new discussion. Rav Yochanan says, Mishum Rabban, Oriel Makabala. So now we have a question like this. Let's say an Oriel becomes contaminated, comes in contact with the dead. So what do you have to do? You have to sprinkle the ash with the water of the paraduma on him on the 3rd and the 7th day. The 3rd and 7th day, right? Now, what happens if you can't circumcise the child? Can't be circumcised because his brothers died. Is he a candidate for sprinkling? Okay? Orel should be kabel hazor. We find Orel, you could sprinkle on him, and it'll be effective. Why? We find the Jewish people, Klal Yisrael, they were contaminated with the dead, right? During the 40-year period, every year a certain percentage of Jews died. People between 20 and 40 would die. So the children attended to the burial of their families. That means by the end of the 40 years, people were tummy. So Yeshua, the Jews he took into Eretz Yisrael, what did they need? They needed to have the paraduma, right? Because otherwise we'll see they couldn't do the Korban Pesach. So we'll see in a moment. When did they sprinkle? You have to have 2 sprinklings. They were circumcised later, and it's clear the sprinkling took place before they were circumcised. Okay? So what does it mean? What does it say in the pasuk? They crossed the Jordan and they came out of Yarden the 10th of Nisan. Okay, you got it. So on the 10th they didn't circumcise them. We'll see, but they were circumcised when they came to Eretz Yisrael because they were too weak. They had to recover from the trip. It's important. On the 10th, they couldn't be circumcised because they were weak from the traveling. So when did these? And you have to have on the 3rd and the 4th day, right? That's the sprinkling. They can't be done too close. 3rd and 7th day, okay? So from the 10th to to the 14th, how many days do you have? So the 10th day you couldn't sprinkle. So you have 11, 12, 13, 14. You have 14 days. So if you sprinkle on the 11th, there's not enough time for the Korban Pesach. Because they have to be in a position, be pure on the 14th. So evidently, when did they have to sprinkle? Before they had the circumcision. Right? So the Gemara says, Amos of Elu, Lav Kishen Arelim. So evidently, when did they sprinkle the paradum on them? When they were still uncircumcised. They came out of the Yarden on the 10th. They were too weak to be circumcised, that he was circumcised on the 11th. But on the 11th, it's already too late to sprinkle on them. So that means they had to be sprinkled pre-circumcision. Okay? So Mar says, Lo dilma lo ovid korban pesach klam. Maybe that year they didn't do korban pesach. When they first, Mar says, Lo soka daitach. It's a posuk. It says, Yichsiv vayasu as a pesach. It says they did bring the korban pesach. Right? Maybe they brought the pesach in a contaminated state. Omale Ravash Tanya Beheja. We learned explicitly in the Braiso. Molu v'tovlu v'osu pischem betaro. They did it in the pure state. So that proves that when you sprinkle on a person, although he's an orel, it's a valid sprinkling. Now, I have a difficulty. Why should I think a sprinkling on a person's orel is not valid? Why should it not be valid? So what? No, I understand. The Gemara says, is a sprinkle uncircumcised person is valid or not? So we bring a proof. Why shouldn't it be valid? Why should it not be valid? So what if you're an orel? No, because a Kohen is not permitted to eat truma if he's uncircumcised. But these are no, that does make a difference. A Kohen is not. The child's a Kohen. If a person has a son of Cholo, is he permitted to give him truma? He's not permitted. It's a son, but he's not permitted to give him truma. Right? So if an orel, a child is uncircumcised, he's not permitted to give him truma. But here, regarding the laws of contamination, why shouldn't he be able to remove the contamination? Just because he's an orel. Therefore what? Why is that a problem? So Tos asked the question. Second Tos on the page. Why should it not be eligible for us? What's the reason? Filu Reb Kiva, the marbled oral ki Tomei, the Tomei Mekabel Hazor, Kidom Per Mechatos. Doesn't answer it. Doesn't answer the question. He doesn't understand. What is the basis for the question? Why should a person's Tomei, an oral, not be eligible for Hazor? Ask the question, doesn't answer it. Okay? No, he doesn't answer it. He leaves it difficult. No, there wasn't. There wasn't a Korban Pesach. No, there was one, and they had the first year in the desert. They had a Korban Pesach. This is before the Chetem Raglim. Before the Chetem Raglim, they had a Korban Pesach. Omer Rabba Yitzchok, Omer Rav, Lo Nidner Prias Mila Lavrom Avinu. You have to, Mila has two parts. You have Mila, and then you have Priya, pulling back the foreskin. So Avram's was just cutting the foreskin, not pulling it back, exposing the Atorah. That's what do they call that? The crown. He calls it. It's called something else. The corona. Crown. Okay. So Avram, Shenema, how do we know? Because it says in the Pasuk, Be'isa hi Oma Hashem el Yeshua, Asil Charvas Tzurim. He should take stones as sharp as swords. This is to do the circumcision. V'dilma Hanoch Lomol. Maybe the ones he had, those are those who weren't circumcised. D'chsiv kimulim hayu kol ha'om hayotzim v'chol ha'om hayulodim. Yeah. Imkei mai shuv. It says shuv means again. Meaning, it says people in the desert weren't circumcised. They had to circumcise them. That he told them to take sharpened stones, that's for the actual circumcision. He says, Imkei mai shuv. Ela priyo. Right? What's shuv? Shuv means again. What's again? Meaning, although you did an act of circumcision, it's not sufficient. No, there was no previous. When? The first part, now you have to continue. The second part, which Avram didn't have. There you go. When previously? They did it when they came out of the Yarden. They did both, but it says the word shuv. Shuv, it says you should do circumcise, then it says return. You're turning on what? Return and complete it. What's there to complete? If you only have to do the first part, there's nothing to complete. Evidently, you have to do more than Avram did. The Pasuk says, Ki molim hoyu kol ha'om ve'yotzim chol ha'om hayulodim b'derech b'tzeis Mitzrayim lo molu. Yeah, the pasuk is Beisahi Amar Hashem El Yoshua Asil Cho Charvet Surim V'Shuv Mol. What's shuv? And again, what's again circumcised? It's the first circumcision. The answer is again means you have to go, even though there's circumstance based on Avram's standard, but again they have to be circumcised. Mean do more than that. Elo la priya umay shonis. My shenis. What is shenis? Lakushi sof mila l'tchilas mila. That the concluding aspect, the process, is similar to the beginning. Matchilas mila makeves. If you don't initially cut off circumcise, it's nothing. Absof mila makvin bo. Ditnan elain tzitzina makvin esamilo. What if you have strips of skin left on the crown of the penis, right? And they weren't removed, right? The child's considered not circumcised. Bosa choves rova Torah. Ve'en ochel betruma. Omer Avinu v'temer Rav Yirmi barabba Omer Rav bosa choves rova gova Torah. We're speaking about doesn't have to be the majority. Even on one side, if it's the majority from the rim to the top, that's a problem. So versus midba my time Now we're going back to why in the desert didn't they circumcise? There's a chiyuv, there's an obligation for father to circumcise his child on the 8th day. Why in the desert period did they not circumcise their children? Either you say because they were weak, which is a tzarafin. I mean, when they traveled, there were times they were in one place for 20 years, right? There were 42 travelings in the desert. So if you're in a place for 20 years, you can't circumcise your child. It says because chulsha de derech, durcha. You become weary, worn down from traveling. The answer was even they were 20, but they never knew when they'd have to travel. Once you circumcise, all of a sudden you have to travel. It's not the weariness pre, even post. We found that Moshe Rabbeinu, he circumcised his child. He had to wait 3 days. That's why he didn't do it immediately. He waited till he got to the inn. So therefore, since at a moment's notice you may have to travel, so therefore they couldn't circumcise the children because they never knew when they'd have to travel. That's what you have to say. Well, would not be considered circumcised. Yeah. No, but they kept the whole Torah before it was given. So they did do it. Even though they weren't obligated, they did it. Yeah, but we said what he was commanded to do. He was only commanded to do that. Now, they ask a famous question. If Avram kept the whole Torah in its entirety before it was given, why did he circumcise himself? The answer is because since he knew he'd be commanded to do the circumcision, therefore it's better to do it in an obligated state rather than a not obligated state. So he waited to become, but maybe once he was circumcised, he did the priya, but not as an obligation. That's no different than the rest of the Torah. Okay? That's the question I always ask. It says, Yosef, to prove to his brothers that he was Yosef, he showed them that he was circumcised. Right? You with me, Howard? When he finally says, Ani Yosef Orovichai. So it says they came close to him. And so he showed him he was circumcised. So the obvious question is, he forced all the Egyptians to circumcise themselves. Right? To get the grain, otherwise he wasn't given grain. So how did that prove? They're no different than him. The answer is the Egyptians, it was without priya. His circumcision was with priya. So therefore, and they understood why was his without priya, with priya, because Yaakov kept the whole Torah before it was given. So he went beyond the obligation. Yosef, what he insisted the Egyptians do, that was just milah. That was without the priya. So therefore, he was able to prove, I'm Yosef, because that was an indication he was Yaakov's son. Okay? Further. So Tosei asks a phenomenal question. He says, if in the desert they didn't circumcise themselves, so how did they eat kochim? Right? It says, why did they circumcise in the desert? Because what? You know, they weren't, the Gemara says, they weren't permitted to eat meat unless it was consecrated meat. You couldn't slaughter an ordinary animal to eat meat. you wanted to eat, you had to bring a korban, shlomim, and you ate it with the shlomim. But if you're uncircumcised, how did they eat meat in the desert? That's Tos's question. Right? And besides, he says, yeah. So he says, he said, the ones who left Egypt, they did Mila and Priya. And they did eat kochim. The children in the desert were not circumcised. Lo ochlu kochim. Hear this? He says something tremendous chiddush. A person who could eat chulin, who could eat consecrated meat, he wasn't permitted to eat non-consecrated. But a child who wasn't circumcised, he couldn't eat consecrated meat, because you have to be circumcised. He was permitted to eat ordinary meat, because it's no different than eating an undomesticated animal. If they wanted to eat a deer in the midbar, they were permitted. So that's Tosa says, because since it was not possible for them to eat consecrated meat, so the unconsecrated is no different than the deer. Okay, further. So first reason is why they circumcise themselves in the desert, because weakness of the traveling. Because you need a northerly wind to blow, because that has to do with the coagulation of the blood. Otherwise they would die. The Tanya hear this? The northerly wind did not blow, might mean, so Tosas explained, didn't blow by itself. It was intermingled with others by itself. My taimo, either because they were considered, the zuf means they were disenfranchised because of the chet of meraglim, the zufim. Hear this? Because if the wind would have blown, it would have dispersed the ani akavod. It's interesting. Why? Good question. Rav Papa, so Rav Papa says, Hilkoch, Yom De'evo. He says, therefore, Rav Papa says, a cloudy day, V'yom De'shusa. A cloudy day or a what? What's Yom De'shusa? Sharuach dromis menasheves. You hear this? This is when the southerly wind blows. A southerly blow, lo malina beg. You shouldn't do circumcision because the child can't recover. Because if the northerly wind doesn't blow, you need the northerly wind to be, that's part of the, it has to do with the clotting of the blood. Mm-hmm. And also, so if it's cloudy where the wind is not blowing, or it's only the southerly wind's blowing, you shouldn't circumcise the child. You don't let blood. No let blood in, because again, you let blood, the blood has to clot, otherwise the person will die. He says, but today, doshbar rabim, but today people do in either case, Shem Hashem. We have this early in the first parak, that God watches over the fools. Right? That's it. Once people assume a certain irresponsible lifestyle, because they're not going to change, therefore Hashem, they merit special protection despite their irresponsible behavior. Ton Rabbanan. There wasn't a that it did not blow. It did blow. But when did it blow? At midnight. Midnight it blew, not during day. It was at midnight Hashem had smitten the firstborn of Egypt. Yeah. What does that mean? Because for us, that the firstborn was smitten, that means it was Nes Ratzon. It was a special time. Our enemies were destroyed. So if that's the case, the northerly one had to blow at that time. My Talmud, Nes Ratzon Milsik, that we see that sometimes it's a time of God's willingness. Good things happen. Amar Avuna Dvar Torah Moshuch Ochel. Now, you have a person, there was an article written a few years ago California, at one time, like in the 50s and 60s, every child, majority of children were circumcised, even goyim. So the anti-Semites, they said it was a Jewish conspiracy, that the Jewish doctors and hospitals, they circumcised Gentile children. So there was a special, you could get off the internet, how to get yourself to regrow the foreskin. There's a way to regrow the foreskin, you know that. Because there's always like a certain element of skin right at the base of the top of the penis, and if you put weights on it, it would encourage the growth, and eventually the top of the penis would be covered with a foreskin. Right? The foreskin would be regrown. And the Jews in Greek times, that's what it did. It's called Moshe Choloso. Although the person is circumcised, he becomes like uncircumcised. Now the question is, a person, it's called, pulls the foreskin back. I mean, it regrows. Is he permitted to eat truma or not? Is he orel? Since the original foreskin was removed, and this is a new skin that grows, is he classified as orel or not? That's the discussion. He's permitted on Torah level, once circumcised, always circumcised. Rabbinically, he's not permitted because he appears like he's uncircumcised. But on Torah level, he's permitted. Meisvei, we learned the Braisa, Moshuch, Tzorach She'omul, Midrabanon. A person who's Moshuch, meaning the foreskin was pulled, grew again, rabbinically he should be circumcised. So Mar says, the Kori, my Kori law. So what's the thing? What's even the consideration to ask the question? Right? Hatzorich Ktoni. Hatzorich Ktoni. It says Sorich Katoy B'Sefer, because he made a mistake, because Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Lo Yimo B'nei Sakona, Ilo. He should not be circumcised because it's a sakona. Omru lo v'alo harbe molu b'mei ben kosiva v'olidu bonim ubonos. Many Jews, they circumcised themselves at the time of Bar Kosiva, it's Bar Kochva, and yet they didn't actually cause any damage. They were able to father children. Shnemar himu lachem afilu mei pomim. You should circumcise even 100 times. So what does that mean? So the pasuk says that an uncircumcised person is considered uncircumcised, even though he was circumcised. Vom is brisi heifar the rabbis is amoshoch. My vom chite mahai yimol the rabbis tzitzin ma'akvin is amilo. You may think himol meal means you have to take off all the foreskin, otherwise the child's not circumcised. Toshmas brisi heifar the rabbis is amoshoch. So what does this mean? It seems to be moshoch on a Torah level. It's not rabbinical. How do you Reb Zera say that a moshoch rabbinically is not permitted to eat truma? Rafuna, we see from here it's a pasuk that the doraisi is not permitted to eat truma. He originally thought that since the Brisa quotes a pasuk, the doraisa, no, the pasuk that the Brisa brings is rabbinical. So therefore, Rafun is not refuted. On a Torah level, a moshuch is permitted to eat truma. Rabbinically, we don't want him to eat truma because he looks like an uncircumcised person. Okay, we'll stop here.